We are live.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are.
And
thanks for joining us.
Room.
Yeah, thanks for joining us for a half-hour discussion on getting real with AI. I know this is our first live LinkedIn event, and thank you all for participating. Whoever's listening and watching out there. This is, we always have something to talk about at Infinite Green because we see a lot of customers, we see a lot of examples of AI in what I would call a fiction form, like what's real and what's kind of out there in the ether that people are talking about, but not really getting into into a practical state that or a practical solution that helps customers. So this is what this discussion is all about today. We're going to be talking about the view from our seats, what we think is working, what's good in what's good in the industry, and what might still need a lot of maturity in the AI space to be an effective solution for a customer. So, John,
that was a great intro, Scott. Thank you.
Hey, and if you have any ideas or comments, please put them in the chat. And if you want us to talk about specific things, please mention. Technology.
All right, Anna, are you kicking us off?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know everybody at Infinite Green, today we've got John Bloom, who's our Chief Illuminator. We've got Scott McIntyre, who's our Chief Instigator. We've got Valerie Rodriguez, who's our Chief Influencer, and we've got Jared Ortlip, who's our Chief Investigator. My name's Anna. I'm a Chief Initiator, and I'm here today just as a moderator. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I will be interacting with you as well in the chat, asking you a few questions. We've only got 30 minutes today, so if we don't manage to answer all your questions, we'll be sure to answer them after today's call. And with that, let's kick things off. So Valerie, can you give me your real world example of AI?
Yeah, sure. I think as a consumer, we've all experienced AI in some form or another, whether it's just predictive text on your iPhone, whether it's engaging with ChatGPT. Personally, I use ChatGPT as my assistant. She has a name. Her name is Nia, and I work with her every single day and help her understand how to best work with me, just like I would a true real life assistant. So that's just kind of a fun way that I've chosen to interact with ChatGPT. We're seeing it through just like our general like Netflix predictions. So I think, where we have leveraged all different types of like, let's look at the past to understand how our behaviors are. From a customer journey perspective, we're seeing where AI is starting to really kind of create predictions and create these predictive trends and really kind of shape our future experiences. So we've seen that a lot of ways in our personal lives. And then, where we're seeing it really well with businesses is really by being able to understand volumes of customer interactions and create, fluid customer journeys, transition the customer journeys into something that is more aligned to, the expected outcomes and the goals. And so we're kind of seeing that shift from, the now into the, the future and the impact.
Yeah, I think it's interesting hearing how some industries have really adopted and taken on AI in a little different way that has kind of been, taking these massive amounts of data and being able to process through it and being able to take again, healthcare and clinical research and things where it would take mountains of people, computing time, and all of those things to come together and then to create a result and go, all right, here's how the test should go. I think healthcare pharmaceuticals have made a huge advancement in the past year in really leveraging AI to do that big data consolidation and those kind of things. And it's interesting how drug discovery, clinical research, and those kind of things are really things that tend to take a long time, that we're cutting short and really getting to more of the crux of what those fixes could be. So Valerie, you're right on, right? It's something that is saving lives, and it's something that is a very positive output of something that seemingly is still a marketing splash of, okay, what's AI to me? And a good practical example of how research is being used, is using AI to get to the answer quicker and with more accuracy. So it's kind of fun to see some of those things that are positive, even though a lot of the negative has been, jobs are going to be lost and those kind of things. But I think really our perspective and point of view is that it enhances what we already do as humans, and that intervention is still really important. Scott, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think what it does really well, AI tools today, it's really set up to analyze large data sets and find patterns that humans would take a longer time to figure out,
Mhm.
um, and patterns that might be hidden behind the scenes, and unique things like how you segment customers, how you look at your products, and those kinds of things. I think it does a really good job at investigating and bringing into the surface things that you might not otherwise know about. I
Mm-hmm.
think where people get confused a little bit is where automation and AI kind of blend. So a lot of people are using automation language and AI language interchangeably, and I think there's a lot of automation that happens without AI tools, and there's a lot of automation that happens with AI tools. And so I think you're starting to see industry results that are combining those two things, kind of like the if-then type of statements that have always been in the marketplace, or been there for 30, 40 years, versus how is AI figuring out a solution for this.
Right.
So when you're looking at statistics and you're looking at companies have automated 70% of their processes, I would argue that I would say probably two-thirds of that is automation based, and maybe a third of that is enabled with actual AI tools, things that are going into a machine learning or a large language model, pulling out data, figuring out how to respond to a customer or how to automate things, and actually putting that to practice. I would say
Mhm.
probably again two-thirds of that is, I would say, traditional automation tool sets versus AI tool sets. And I think
Yeah, it's a pretty
go
Yeah, it's a
ahead.
pretty timely example with retail kind of being in the crosshairs right now with Black Friday and some of the big drive times that they have. And inventory management was always kind of a product of how well the merchant teams knew what was going to be hot for that year and how much to supply, and to do that predictive kind of gut feel. And now inventories can be managed at a much tighter volume, which means you don't have to have warehouse space. You don't have to have a lot of extra buying on things that may not be, from a velocity perspective, good for your business. And again, it takes human intervention to do that, to know what kind of your customer set is. But really, when it comes right down to how much you're spending for big retailers, like Scott and Jared and I came from Best Buy, and knowing this drive time was always a big question mark. It was always the most important holiday season ever, because there were some unknowns.
Mhm.
But having 1,000 stores and having that daily velocity leading up to these holiday drive times and Cyber Monday and some of the online kind of activity was hard to take all of that in and go, all right, how should we really hedge our bets? And really, it's much easier to do that now with predictive modeling and some of the things that again generate a lot of really healthy results for, hey, should we hedge our bet here or should we not focus on this? And the contact centers in retail, Jared, when you were doing forecasting models for all the partners that we had that were taking calls and doing all the work, whether it was chat, email, phone calls, whatever, that workforce management, workforce optimization was really, again, it was a gut feel, and you had to put a lot of calculation into it to say, okay, now I'm comfortable with that. Maybe you can share a little bit more about that.
We call it art and science. That part's
Yeah,
the art, and because we didn't know, right? It
yeah,
was a lot of guesstimation, if you will. But that's actually one of the areas that I think is really exciting with AI, and the potential that probably isn't quite there yet, but is definitely moving that direction. I think from a workforce perspective, if you think about um, typically what a workforce optimization team will do, the forecasting, scheduling, real-time management, to kind of work backwards up. Real-time management's got some things that are already kind of automated, and you can consider it automated. But there's areas where AI could jump in and kind of learn patterns and use that predictive analytics to understand, what your real time might look like, when you might lose people off the phones or off chat or email or into your contacts. where you might need them, kind of reforecast your day as it goes, maybe automatically. And these things are just starting to kind of, I think we're on the precipice of a bunch of really cool things coming out in workforce management tools. Another one I think of is, to your point, John, forecasting, and correlation analysis is another spot
Hmm.
that because I remember, and I probably even came to you back in the day when we were all at Best Buy, and asked you things. But I always had a question about, does the foot traffic in the store impact my contacts in the contact center, and in what way? And
Right,
I probably had all the data, but never had the time to go through all of that data and correlate it and understand what those impacts could be. I
right.
think we can get a lot smarter about our forecasting with correlations like that, or even crazy stuff like, does the weather impact my foot traffic, which
Right.
impacts my calls, right? Like,
Well,
kind
I
of
think
carry
that's
it
a
through the process.
yeah, that's a benefit, I think, in a bigger way. And one of the stigmas around AI right now is it's, we're going to lose jobs. And if you take the phenomenon of, we had to have that model that you're talking about for Best Buy ready to go, what, months in advance, so that
Hmm.
we could prepare our vendor partners so that they could go and hire a bunch of people, knowing full well in January and February we'd have to let a lot of that staff go. So for the audience here and for us, if you think about being able to leverage that predictive side earlier with much more of a tangible result of reading patterns and reading kind of, again, the tea leaves, the art and the science, is you don't have to have that extreme ramp up for an extreme ramp down, which is angst for everybody. But it gives you a lot more of a predictable model so that you're not burning so many cycles on training and hiring and firing and all of the things that, again, make the experience around this much more difficult and impacts that CX or customer experience, as we know, and agent experience. And so, again, I think to your point, Jared, like the forecasting piece and some of the models can be brought forward versus saying, hey, what do we do now to lower costs? Well, you can do that in a much more beneficial way if you build it into the forecasting and into the planning.
Mhm. Yeah, and even thinking about like that analytic time, Jared, right? Like you certainly had the skills to do it, but not the time to do it. And that's what we're seeing, across,
Yeah.
where automation and AI and then agent assistance and agent augmentation really kind of crosses over is, taking the people that do have the skills and making it much easier for them to do their jobs, both better and more efficiently. I would say that the constant across all three of those things is really strong foundation and really strong knowledge, right? The same way that you would think about training your CX agents to handle a process or handle an interaction, that level of documentation and true like knowledge databases is super critical to inform automation workflows, AI, generative AI, and the tone and all of the knowledge that they're going to tap into in order to generate new content, as well as hand that off to an agent so that they can bypass all the transactional stuff and truly focus
Mhm.
on the relationship element between the brand and the customer and carry that through without getting stuck on just some of those boring, monotonous tasks that they've been tasked with in the past.
Yeah, and I think where AI has really shined is the quality analysis of a call, of an interaction, being able to monitor interactions, listening to the conversation, understanding the emotion, understanding the process, understanding the intent of the call.
Mhm.
And people used to have large quality teams to monitor calls one at a time and score them out. John, I
A
think you
very
had
small percentage, yeah.
back in the day. John
Yeah.
John used to work on a quality team at U.S. Bank, which used to record things on cassette tape. Not to age John too much, but having those kinds of tools so that you can pinpoint where an agent training need
Mhm.
is, versus having to sift through hours and hours of volume. You can really get and pinpoint that training opportunity for an agent and focus just pinpoint to where that struggle is, or what they're struggling to serve the customer with, and coach them quickly. So I've seen that the learning curves of agents that are serving customers significantly be reduced with these kinds of tools and focused coaching efforts. And there's
Mhm.
tools in the market like Amplify
Mhm.
that saves a ton of company time, and not just time and analysis, but brings people up to speed a lot faster on the floor, and are have quality
Mm.
interactions with customers much sooner than they were in the past. Which it might bring a learning curve from 90 days down to 30 or even
Yeah.
15 at times.
And it solves the age-old calibration challenge, right? Having
Yeah.
to do these constant calibrations and still getting different results if different people are, doing the same quality assessment on the same call or interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really important about all of these things that we've talked about is the data component, right? I think there's so much appetite for companies to jump in and solve the big problem, or the big problems or use cases with AI or something that will give them that curve jump up, from an efficiency or an optimization standpoint. But that data model, and Valerie, your point, like the data quality around, hey, am I getting consistent information? Is it standardized across the board? Is it normalized? Those kind of things. I think that's probably where a little bit of the miss or the disappointment with the productivity gains that were so front and center in the marketing splash of AI, call it last year, last couple of years, and really some of the differences between standard AI, generative AI, and we can talk about that later. But I think the importance around understanding what your data model is, one version of the truth, and making sure that you're really focusing on the elements that you can truly like bank on from a data element perspective before you jump into your AI projects. Or if you don't know what you don't know, that's a good bit of housekeeping that you can do before you really get into the use cases and how should we jump into this pool together and make things really work the way that we need to for our customers and for our employees. And that data element piece, I think, is something that's oftentimes overlooked, or it hasn't been touched in so long that that care and feeding or that cleanup on aisle 5, or however you want to
Mhm.
call it, spring cleaning, fall cleaning, is really important to prepare yourself if you're still unsure of how to jump into AI.
Yeah, it's really tough to automate interactions that aren't consistent,
Mhm.
right? So if you have processes in your organization, speaking to the data points, John, if you have processes that are inconsistent or don't have data, it's really tough to ask a machine learning or an AI tool to interact with your customers with missing pieces. So what we've seen successful, is it's kind of a three-step model. Is one, you have to have a language model, right? Whether it's Amazon, Google, pick your large language model. It doesn't matter which one you use. The second part of that is companies have been tuning these language models to their industry, which is I have a healthcare language model, or I have a finance language model, or a retail language model. And so you see these language models being honed down and tuned so you don't have these broad-based conversations. They understand the language of healthcare. Healthcare is a great example
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of terminology in healthcare that between patients and providers that get lost in translation. And then the third part of that is the data, your internal data, whether it's a knowledge base, a process, a solution set, whatever it is. Marrying those things together will allow you to have better automated interactions with customers. I think that's the key, is making sure that you're thinking about this holistically as your customer would think about it, and making sure you have those types of pools of resources to rely on to provide a solution versus just, hey, I'm just going to ask ChatGPT a question about this specific company. Most likely,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to find the right answer, or
Mhm.
it's just going to be incomplete, or it's not going to be specific enough in its solution set. So I think, getting back to your point, John, data is the biggest part of making that successful. And the other thing, that I think
But yeah,
AI,
before you go there, Scott, I think the tuning of that and the accuracy around it
yeah,
requires thoughtful human intervention, right? I mean, we all need to understand what the end goal is with what we're trying to accomplish, what our customers are going to experience. Like having that version of what that destination experience needs to be before you start saying, I'm going to tweak or tune the data so that it works within the model. You really do have to define or at least have a very strong perspective about what you're trying to do
Mhm.
versus, hey, where can I make the cut the hardest, the deepest, get the quickest return on my investment? I have the model and maybe on a different a different time we'll talk about the fanny pack philosophy that I have. But to be honest, it's a lifestyle, and AI is a lifestyle. It's not a project, in my opinion.
Mhm.
You have to be willing to really go into this as thinking as it's going to be a tool, Jared, to your point about kind of the forecasting and prediction. It's going to be a leveraged element of your life, Valerie, like you have with Nia.
Mhm.
And from a data perspective, all of that is kind of parts and parcel of the projects that you work on, but really understanding where you're trying to go with experience and how you layer in some of these capabilities like Amplify, like some of the contact center solutions that are starting to do things like sentiment analysis and helping, maybe you have a team of agents on the phone that are really good at disarming or de-escalating strong situations that you can route calls to based on how they've talked or used the voice bot. So Poly AI does a great job of bringing IVA services and virtual assistant kind of services to the voice side. And so that sentiment analysis can really give you a better experience, an optimized experience with the resources that you have, but you really have to jump into this knowing what you're trying to do from an experience lens before you really jump in. And
Mhm.
that's the piece that I think is really, again, human intervention and the expertise that we all want to bring to the table is extremely important and shouldn't be lost or
Mhm.
thought that it's just going to be taken care of because this AI thing that's out there, whatever it is going to start thinking on its own and doing all this stuff unbeknownst to me or my leadership that I've learned my career over.
Oh, we have a question, if you guys are okay to answer it.
That's really
AI ML is only as good as one's data. Do you face uphill battles with companies who don't want to clean up their data yet want the benefits of the AI world?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think people are not. I don't think companies are patient enough to build the foundation in a lot of ways. I think the companies that are successful um, are the ones that look at their foundational data first, design experiences second, and then implement versus trying to shotgun. I'd say experiences, and I'll look to I'll give an example of Air Canada. Air Canada put out a bot last year, and the bot was just it wasn't programmed. It was just it sat on their FAQs on their website and other airlines' websites. And what happened was somebody asked the bot about a bereavement fare and how do I get reimbursed? And the bot told them the wrong process, which was you buy the ticket and then you ask for the bereavement fare afterwards. And so he did that, and he bought the ticket, and then he wanted to make a claim in a sense for the bereavement fare, and they said no, that's not the right process. I said, but your bot told me to do it this way. And so they had to pull it. The customer ended up suing, and this is a whole long story. But Air Canada finally pulled the bot down, and that's just because they didn't have the right foundational data set. They didn't incorporate elements of the operation, the organization that understands the process, the organization that understands how customers ask for things. This was kind of a technology team putting out technology for technology's sake. And so I think it's very important to have foundational data, whether it's knowledge, process, data sets, whatever it is, in place. And it doesn't have to be 100%, but it has to be deliberate enough attempt to make sure that when bots and automation start interacting with your customers or doing processes, that it's close to the pin. And you always need that tuning. To John's
mhm.
earlier point, you need tuners, which goes back to organizational structures. So when companies set them up for success, they're orchestrating these experiences across all channels, and they have an organizational structure in place that understands how to do that. A lot of times, companies try to start in the AI space without looking at their organizational and their skills and their alignment and roles and responsibilities, and so no one's monitoring the shop. And I think that's what happened with that Air Canada example.
Well, and be transparent about it, right? I mean, I think the world gives much more credit if you're transparent about,
Mhm.
hey, we're in the early stages of delivering a better service for you. We want to know what your feedback is, but if there's something that seems wonky, let us know. And again,
Mhm.
that's annoying, right, when you're trying to get something done. But I think the transparency and something that we always practice, Scott, when we were doing big website changes or big service changes in BestBuy.com or Geek Squad or US Bank or State Farm or whatever, it was always, hey, let's tell everybody that the dust is flying so that we ultimately can make their experience better. And we all worked on the United Health Group project together on their Medicare Made Clear and their education site. And Jared, when you were designing the bot, and Valerie, we were going through kind of their experience anchors and making sure that we started appropriately. The number one thing, and I'll quote Leilani Bloomquist for this from a change management perspective, is you know give the customers a chance to give you a chance, right? Let them understand that, hey, we're doing this on behalf of a better service, but there might be some tweaks in here that we need to make, and we appreciate them understanding that we're in the process of doing this versus, hey, we're going to just do this big splash and then hope, cross your fingers and hope, which is not a good strategy, in my opinion, to make sure that it works the right way. But I think there's that natural progression that we are all in at this point with the marketing splash of AI, and it has to be perfect right away. And tell me a project that we've all worked on that was perfect right away. It just doesn't happen.
And from an organizational focus, I would tie that back to voice of customer as well. Customers are going to have a lot more grace if they are a part of tuning and evolving, and also see that you have that continuous feedback loop, and actually changes are being applied. So I think making sure that that's a part of course, the foundational data element is key. Getting knowledge and being organizationally prepared to implement any new tool, but certainly AI as a part of that. But then also ensuring, again, that your organizational structure is prepared to support it, and that you're then asking for feedback and incorporating those changes as you tune, as you grow, as you evolve. Just like many of the tools and systems, it's not a set it and forget it type thing, and especially with AI and its modern abilities, it's something that really just needs that dedicated attention, and it's just a continuous growth evolution.
Yeah, companies that are successful are going to be the ones that orchestrate all of those experiences and all of their learning, to a more grand design that someone put together that they want their customers to experience, versus the one and done. To your point, Valerie, these things are evolving quickly. The experiences are evolving quickly, and you need to have an agile organization looking at the capability, the measurements, that understands the customer journey at times, or whatever you're trying to accomplish, and being able to orchestrate those together. Those are going to be the companies that get the most value out of leveraging AI tools.
Good question. Thanks.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end now, sadly. I think we could talk about this for hours, probably. It's a real hot topic. John, do you just want to wrap up with your final thoughts?
Sure. I'd love to share a little bit about the conversation that we just talked about. If I can share my screen really quick, something that's really helped me in kind of visualizing, because I'm a big visual learner, and that's the big part of what Infinite Green does, is help to visualize the problem and then create the solution together with our clients. What I wrote in my chat GPT, can you see my screen? Can everybody see
We saw it for a second and then it went away.
Ah,
You want to reshare?
all right. Let's see if I can get. Let me try that again. Got it. All right. Now you should be able to see my ChatGPT screen.
Not yet.
Yes?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
there it is.
All right. So I said, draw a
Live
picture.
demos.
This is DALL-E. This is part of ChatGPT, and it's a free version. I said, draw a picture about the positive uses of AI and the challenges that continue to be in the market with AI and the practical applications we want as consumers and employees. And I wanted to do this just as a hey, this is how easy and how it can start to generate ideas for us. And I think embracing AI, whether it's generative or just, kind of the automation AI conversation that Scott was talking about, or some of the functional areas that, we can use, you can start to visualize what ChatGPT does. And what I'll do here is can you see that picture?
Yep.
All right,
Yep,
great.
Ken.
So what's interesting about this, and again, it's really noisy and whatever, but this is, again, Dali's version of how do I generate something that's pretty nebulous, pretty subjective. And the interesting thing about this isn't necessarily the picture, because I think the picture is pretty noisy and not necessarily very comprehensive, or it's comprehensive, but only in the ways that I tuned it the first way. But you've got these things like it's spelled positive, Positive. So why doesn't, in my opinion, and this is where I think the tweaking and tuning is really important and understanding that it's not going to be perfect out of the gate, why does ChatGPT not do a standard spell check? Why is it okay for them to put, this out as being a practical solution to the question that I posed to it? And it's really an interesting kind of model, but if I'll stop sharing now, but I think if we all kind of embrace it, look at ChatGPT, look at some of the ways of doing it and going, hey, I still have a lot of control and a lot of ability to interact with this and figure out how to make it work for our company or for my team or for a use case that we've been struggling with. I think that's a great start. And I think, again, if you have a whiteboard and you have 60% of that whiteboard filled out with great ideas like brainstorming, it can get you farther down the road quicker. And I think that's the way that I look at ChatGPT or some of the AI generators that are out there to say, okay, how would I take that forward? Human, how do I take it forward to the business problem, the end experience that we're looking at doing, and how do we keep moving forward and helping AI help us versus being this, this constant struggle between CX and AI. So thanks everybody for joining us today. It was fun to chat about this. I think we've got more on the horizon, and we're going to continue to get feedback from everyone and really tune again the way that these experiences go for you. And we appreciate your time. Time is very valuable. So I hope everyone enjoyed that, and please give us some feedback in the notes or in LinkedIn as you go forward.
And we love to talk about this stuff. So if you want to schedule a meeting with us, there's a QR code up in the upper right, left-hand
Oh,
corner,
thanks, Scott.
right-hand corner. And
Yeah.
thanks for everyone's time.
See you,
Thanks. Have a
everybody.
good
Thanks,
day.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a
Bye.
great day.
Bye.